This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good morning, Rabbi. Sefer Daniel, Perek Tes, Pasuk Chav Daled. We're talking about the Nevuah of Yirmiyah Hanavi. Yirmiyah Hanavi was given the following Nevuah, that at the end of the 70 years, Klal Yisrael would be remembered. And according to Daniel's calculation, the 70 years had passed and nothing doing. And we explained that the 70 years was not from when Nebuchadnezzar became the king of Babel, which was in obviously year 1 of his reign. It was not in year number 2 of his reign, which he conquered King Yehoiakim. It was not in year 8 of his reign when he conquered King Yehoiachin, but rather it was in year 18 of his reign, or 19 of his reign, when he destroyed the Beis HaMikdash and exiled Tzidkiyahu HaMelech. So now we're up to Pasuk Chav Daled. Shavuim Shivim. Weeks Shavuim. Weeks. Shivim. 70 weeks. Nechtach Alamcha was decreed on your people. This is the Malach Gavriel explaining to the Malach Michael what Daniel's Nevuah meant, right? We knew that Daniel saw the angel sitting in the river, and the Michael orders Gabriel to explain to Daniel, right, the meaning of the Nevuah. So in 70 weeks, Nechtach Alamcha, it was decreed on your people. Now we're going to learn that this does not mean 70 weeks, but rather 70 weeks of years. Now what's a week of year? What does it mean, 70 weeks of years?
7 times years.
70 weeks of years.
Each week has 7 years.
A week of year is 7 years. So 70 weeks of years is 490 years. So what the Malach is telling Daniel is Shavuim Shivim. 70 weeks of years. Now that's how many years? 490 years. Nechtach Alamcha was decreed upon your people. 40 weeks of years. In other words, what is 490 years? 490 years, what's the significance of that? 70 years of Galus Bavel, plus 420 years of the standing of the second Beis HaMikdash. That's a total of 490 years. So 490 years was decreed on your people. And at that point, V'yaler Kochecha, and on your holy city, L'chale Fesha, HaPesha, to destroy sin, Ulehasem Chatois, and to eradicate evil, Ulechaper Avain, and to wipe away iniquity, Ulehavit Tzedek Olamim, to be able to bring eternal righteousness. Meaning in 490 years that will trigger the galus that eventually would bring to the eradication of evil and to bring eternal tzedek. Belachtoim Chazain V'Navi, to seal up vision and prophecy. V'lem Shayach, and to anoint Kodesh Kadashim, the Holy of Holies. Now what is this talking about? Let's see Rashi. Rashi says, Shavuim Shivim Nechtach, 70 weeks were decreed. Al Yushalayim Miyoim Churban Rishon, from the time of the first destruction, be made Tzidkiyahu, Ad Sheyiyah B'Shniya, until there will be the second Galus. L'chalei hapesh ul'hasem chata sheyikablu Yisrael es gemar puranasam. In other words, 490 years were decreed until Klal Yisrael receives the completion of their punishment, begalas Titus, in the exile of Titus, v'shibud, u'kedei sheyichlu pesheim, v'yitamu chatasam, v'yiskaper avaynoisam, kedei lahavi aleim tzedek olamim. In other words, what the Navi is saying is that, hey, you guys were in Galus for this amount of years, but you didn't complete your time yet. Your time has not elapsed. In 490 years, you're going to have to do time again. Like we learned this morning, that the period of the second Beis HaMikdash was merely a reprieve of the Galus. But already from the onset, even before the building of the second Beis HaMikdash, it was decreed that we would go into Galus. And Rabbi say, this week's Parsha is what?
Matas Maseh.
Matas Maseh. So remember what the Megala Amukos says. Eile Maseh B'nai Yisrael. So these are the travels of Bnei Yisrael. So the Megala Amukos says, what are the travels of Bnei Israel? Eila Aleph is Edom. Masei Mem is Madai. Beis Bnei Israel is Bavel. Yud is
Yishmael.
Yavan. According to the Maral, according to the Ibn Ezra, Yishmael. So Eila, Edom, the Masei Bnei Israel is Edom, Madai, Bavel, Yavan. Says Megala Amukos. What's the trup on Eila Masei Bnei Israel? Eila, what is that? Azla Geresh. They left. Geresh, they were chased out. Eila Masei Bnei Yisrael is Azla Geresh. Azla Geresh means they were chased out and they went. Munach, Bnei, and Ravi, the four Golosim. That was the comment of the Megala Amukos. Eila Masei Bnei Yisrael is Rashi Tevois, Edom, Madai, Bavel, Yavan, and the trup is Azla Geresh, Munach, Ravi. Right? We once explained why in that order. Edom, Madai, Bavel, Yavan. Why in that order? It's out of order. Edom is last. Backwards. Right? The order is what? Bavel, Madai, Yavan, Edom. So if you look in Shas, in the Gemara says, which nation lost the Lavai? Which nation comes first to God to claim that they did things for the sake of Klal Yisrael? The Gemara says the most important, the greatest of all the empires. Who's the greatest of all the empires? Rome, Edom. They're number one. And after them, the Gemara says, Parasumadai. They're number two. And then between Yavan and Bavel, we explained that Yavan would come first and then Bavel. But in any event, Rabbi say, let's... So this was already decreed and foresaw from before. Now what does it mean? V'lemshayach kodesh kadashim? Says Rashi, in order to anoint the Aron and the Mizbechos and the Klei HaKodesh, how are we going to be able to anoint these things? Al Yedei, the Melech HaMashiach. Now that's a very important thing to know. This is a very important thing to know. And that is...
Excuse me, can we lower the leaving?
Yeah, we did. We put on 74. So it says V'lemshayach kodesh kadashim. Rashi points out that the Aron and the Mizbechos and the Klei HaKodesh.
Is it on auto or
The Aron,
if you alive?
the Aron, the Mizbechos and the Klei HaKodesh that will come through the Melech HaMashiach. What is this talking about? Why do we need the Melech HaMashiach to anoint these items? So we mentioned that during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, they did not possess what? Shemen HaMishcha. Even at the time of the end of the first Beis HaMikdash, they didn't have the Shemen HaMishcha. In order to have the Shemen HaMishcha, we have to wait until Mashiach comes. Okay. The Pasuk says further. Now, when is this going to happen? So the Rashi just concludes, at the conclusion of the 490 years, the 20 years of Bavel, and the 420 years of the Bayis Sheni, that will set into motion all of this punishment that will wipe away the sins of Klal Yisrael. Pasuk Chafei. The Seidah, the Malach tells Daniel, you should know. The Saskel, you should comprehend. Min moitza davar, that it has emerged from your words.
What's the difference between Seidah and Pascal?
Well, there's a difference between Das and Seichel. What is the difference?
Well, we're talking about a Navi here. I mean,
in other words,
you'll get a vision and then they'll finally understand what it is.
Well, let's see. You will know min moitza davar. Rashi points out mitoich moitza davar zeh sheyatze betchilas tachnunecha lahagid lecha teida.
I have another jacket.
Teida.
That's why he says lahaskil.
Lahashiv velivnois Yerushalayim.
That's why he says lahaskil, because lahaskil is to understand moitzi davar lahashiv. To know is lahavim. Lahaskil is to be able to know from it, to understand the second thing. To know another davar mitach davar.
Okay, right. The Gemara said, Rabbi said that Daniel was not necessarily a Navi. Daniel was not One of the Nevi'im. So this was Begeder Ruach HaKodesh. That from the very onset of what you said, Lahashiv v'livnois Yerushalayim, to restore and to rebuild Yerushalayim, Ad Mashiach Nagid, until, what does it mean Ad Mashiach Nagid? Says Rashi, Zaman Tinasein, time will be given. Miyayim HaChurban, from the time the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Ad Ba Kairesh Melech Paras, until the king of Paras, Kairesh, came. Sha'amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Alav, that Hashem said about him, Shehu Yashav, he'll return, Ve'yivne Iroi, and rebuild his city. Ve'karai Meshichai Unegidai. Kairesh is called the anointed one and the prince of Hashem. Now Kairesh was not a Jew. Where was Kairesh called the appointed one and the prince of God? Like it says, Kaya Amar Hashem leMeshichai Kairesh. So says God to his anointed one Kairesh, Hu Yivne Irei v'Galusa Yishalach. So this is referring, is a reference in Nevuah about Kairesh, that after this time period, actually what will cause this time period is that from the time Daniel had already began to pray. Now this would have to mean something very interesting, because the Malach is telling Daniel, from the time you began to pray, Hashem already put into motion the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. That's going to occur. Mashiach Nagid. Who's Mashiach Nagid? Kairesh. That Shavuim Shiva, in 7 weeks. Now what are 7 weeks?
7 Shmittas, Rashi.
7 weeks of years.
Yes,
7 weeks of years. Sheva Shmitas Shleimos. 7 weeks of years.
49.
They will be in Galus. What?
49.
And then in 49 years, Hashem is going to allow Kairesh to begin to give the plans to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. So just let's get the history a little straight. We know between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni, there were how many years? 70 years. At what point did Kairesh give word, okay, go build the Beis HaMikdash?
112 years.
In year 52. In year 52 of the 70 years, Kairesh said, you Jews, go ahead, go build the temple. That word was given 18 years before the Beis HaMikdash was built. There was interference with that command until finally it was allowed to be carried out in year 70. So this is...
Did Daryavesh play a role in the second Beis HaMikdash?
Daryavesh?
Yeah. I thought he was the one
that's
that
the
gave
first
us
Beis
the
first one, not the second one.
The first one said go, and then it's...
Kairesh was the first one to give word to build a second Beis HaMikdash, but it was halted, and then I believe it was under the rule of Daryavesh II that it was actually built. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, look at Rashi. Shavuim Shiva, in 49 years. In 49 years. Sheva Shmitais Shalemois Yiu Begoila. 7 Shemitah years, you're going to be in Galus. Kaidem Sheyavei Kairesh, before Kairesh comes. Now the question is, Kairesh came in year 52, not in year 49. So how could Daniel be told that in 7 Shemitah cycles Kairesh will come? That should be year 49, not year 52. The answer is, how are you going to mark year 52? The closest Shemitah cycle number to when Kairesh is coming is the 7th, in the 49th year. Sheyavei Kairesh, v'oid hayu yoser shalosh shanim. There was an additional 3 years on top of the 49. Ela mitoich shaloi shilma hashavua, because they did not complete that Shemitah cycle. Loi nimna b'shana achas. Loi nimna, it's not counted. B'shnas achas l'daryavesh hamadai shahaya Daniel oimed by. This is in year 1 of King Daryavesh of Madai that Daniel is standing on. Kishenemar Eloi HaChazan Hazeh Kalu Shivim, the 70 years L'Kibush Yehoyakim, concluded the 70 years of the conquest of Yehoyakim. Tzei Mehem Yud Cheshana, subtract 18 years Shekadma Kibush Yehoyakim L'Chorbas Yerushalayim, that the conquest of Yehoyakim came before the Churban Yerushalayim. Nisharu Nun Beishana, Hi Sheshana Rabbi Seinu, Nun Beishana Loi Avar Ish Yehuda. For 52 years, nobody crossed the land of Yehuda. Heim Nun Beishana Asher Miyoim HaChurban Ad Shechazru B'mei Kairesh Harei Zayin Shmitais V'Shalai Shanim. Now, what is this talking about? We are now standing, says Rashi. Daniel, who had this nevuah, is standing in the first year of the reign of Daryavish. The 70 years, now when was Yehoiakim conquered? Yehoiakim was conquered 18 years before Churban Yerushalayim. In year 1, Yehoiakim was conquered. In year 7, Yehoiachin was conquered. In year 18, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So Daniel is now saying this nevuah 18 years before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. If you take away
about this after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, because we just counted the 3 years and the 49 and 52 and then you had 18. So I think the whole scenario was after the destruction.
In 52 years.
Not before the destruction. Yeah, but now he's saying that he's talking about this before the destruction of Bayis Rishon.
No, because Yehoiakim got out before. I just thought year 1.
Okay, you ready? In year 1, Yehoiakim was conquered. 70 years later to that date.
Year 1 of what?
Of Nebuchadnezzar, of Bavel. Of year 1 of what we're talking about now. Year 1, Yehoiakim was conquered. And at that point in time, they were promised in 70 years something is going to happen. So think of it this way. 18 years later, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. 52 years after that, Koresh was commanded that they could build the Bayis Sheni. So 70 years to the date that Nebuchadnezzar came in and conquered Yehoiakim, word was given that they could build the Bayis Sheni. There are actually two nevuahs. No, Koresh. Koresh said Klal Yisrael could build. Koresh said Klal Yisrael could build the Bayis Sheni. So there was actually, one second. There were two nevuahs given to Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah was told in 70 years I will visit you, and then he was told in 70 years you'll build the Beis HaMikdash. Both of those nevuahs came true. When he was told in 70 years I will visit you, 70 years from the conquering of Yehoiakim, which happened 18 years before the Churban Beis HaMikdash, 70 years from that date, word was given to build the second Beis HaMikdash. But 70 years from the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, which was 18 years after Yehoiakim was conquered, they actually built the second Beis HaMikdash. Now where Daryavish plays a role over here, Rashi is
not they built the Beis HaMikdash. They gave word that they could build.
70 years after the destruction.
There's two different 70-year periods.
Yes,
here.
correct.
And depending upon which 70-year period, one 70-year period is the Mamish, they started building the Beis HaMikdash, and the other one is that they got the approval. So the second 70-year period where the approval starts earlier.
But there was a 52-year overlap.
Right. 52-year overlap that was the same years in both periods. One started 18 years earlier, the 170-year period, and one started 18 years later.
And
that's what 18 years.
70 years from what was the building of the Beis
HaMikdash? Of which
HaMikdash?
52 were common years.
Rabbi
Start
Glatstein.
from Koresh,
Rabbi
and then
Glatstein.
became Daryavish.
Rabbi Glatstein.
Yes.
70 years from when was the building of the Beis HaMikdash?
70
Yehoiakim?
No, 70 years from the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash was the building of the second Beis HaMikdash. But 70 years from the conquest of Yehoiakim, word was given by Koresh to build the second Beis HaMikdash. Now, according to this chart that I'm going to borrow over here, there were two Daryavishes. The first Daryavish was the successor of Belshazzar, and he became the king when Belshazzar was assassinated. He did not reign that long. He reigned less than 2 years. After he died, he was succeeded by Koresh. As soon as he died, Koresh gave word that Klal Yisrael could build the Beis HaMikdash. Koresh died 2 years later. You know who took over him? Basically Achashverosh, and then Achashverosh was Darius II, who eventually gave the final word to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. So now, what does Rashi mean when he says that Shahaya Daniel Oimed Ba? Daniel is standing now in the first year of Daryavish. And in the first year of Daryavish,
Daryavish the first or the second?
the first, that is basically 70 years from when Yehoiakim was conquered. And as soon as Daryavish dies and Koresh takes his place, word is given immediately to build the second Beis HaMikdash. So Daniel is told, you should know that right now, the first set of 70 years is coming to an end, and it's going to be completed by Koresh giving word to build the second Beis
So the
Hamikdash.
way we were talking is, you're talking about there's an 88-year period, of which 52 are common years that apply to both. The first 70 years...
Right, there's 18, 52, and 18.
18.
So those 52 years...
52 are common to both 70 years.
Right, and that 52 year is important, because Rashi says we have a tradition that for 52 years, that Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael is desolate completely, like Avar Ish Behuda. That 52-year period.
Right.
Okay, so now when the Malach tells Daniel that in 7 Shemitas something's going to happen, it means 7 Shemitas plus 3 years. But what's he going to tell him? 8 Shemitas? 8 Shemitas is 56 years. Okay. B'shavuim shishimushtayim, and in an additional 62 Shemitas, Tashav, you will return. V'nivnasa, and you will rebuild. Rechayv, the streets. V'charetz, the mode. Uvitzaik ha'itim, and it will be troubled times. Now what does that mean? What are these 62 Shemitas? It doesn't mean for 62 Shemitos you will build it then. It means it will be built for 62 Shemitos. What does that mean? Now how much is 62 times 7?
434.
What is 62 times 7? 434. So 7 Shemitos is 434. 62 Shemitos is 434. 7 Shemitos is 49. What's 434 plus 49?
463.
463. How many Shemitos are you missing?
From 70.
Not 463.
No.
483. 62 Shemitos is 434. 7 Shemitos is 49. What's 49 and 434? 483. So we're missing 1 Shemitah. We said, right. So what does this mean? So for 7 Shemitos, you're going to be in Galus for the 49 years. 3 years later,
We got permission.
we got permission to rebuild the second Beis Hamikdash, which is 3 years into the eighth Shemitah. But we're not counting that Shemitah because it's a half a Shemitah. We're not going to count now when permission was given. Permission was given in year 52. That means 18 years they had permission to build it. They didn't build it until which Shemitah cycle? So they didn't build it until whatever, the 59th Shemitah cycle. So let's take a look at Rashi. Uvitzai ko'itim. You ready? Uvitzai ko'itim. Va'oisan ha'itim. Those times you bitzai kubatzar, they will be in distress. Ki b'shibud malchei paras. Because under the dominion of Persia, va'oivdei kachavim, you matrichim aleim b'shibud kasha. They're going to bother us with very harsh bondage. Even though it will be for 62 Shemitah cycles. Now, the truth is, 62 Shemitah cycles is not really doing it justice. Because permission was given in year 52, which is 7.5 Shemitah cycles. So it's really 62.5 Shemitah cycles. In other words, if I were to ask you, from the time permission was granted, until how long of a period was there that a Beis Hamikdash was allowed to be built and it stood for? Well, there were 438 years that the Beis Hamikdash was allowed to be built for, starting from year 52 of the Galus. So for 18 years of the 70 years, plus 420 that it actually stood. So even though it's really 62 Shemitah cycles, and 4 years that remained from the 8th Shemitah cycle, that 3 of those years were already swallowed up within the 52 of the Galus. We're not counting them. We're counting complete Shemitah cycles. At first, the Malach says to Daniel, there's going to be a 70-week Shemitah cycle. So the Malach starts off like this. Daniel, I want you to know that there's going to be a period of time now that lasts for 70 Shemitah cycles. right? Which is the 490 years. 70 years of Galus, 420 years of the Beis HaMikdash. After 7 of the Shemitah cycles, permission will be given. From the time permission is given, how long will that period of time last for? From the time permission is given until the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed?
38.
62 Shemitah cycles, but we're not counting those 4 years because it's a half a cycle. Okay? So that's what Uvesoif.
How long will it take to them to build the Beis HaMikdash?
The second Beis HaMikdash?
Yes. To be built, from the time they started building to the end.
I don't know. The first Beis
Got
HaMikdash.
permission. It took them 18 years from the time
No,
they
it
got
took
permission.
18 years for them
Well,
to
you know how to
get
get the
to get
permit,
to get all the architects together.
Yeah,
Yeah, took all the Jews to get 18 years for them to get. But then how long will it take them to build it and for them to work?
What?
12 years to build the World Trade Center.
It was stopped in the middle, wasn't it?
Well, they started it. And Koresh gave permission, and then Haman's sons, they wrote an accusation. They cut off Sitna, and then they started again. But from the time they started for real, I don't know. The first Beis HaMikdash took 7 years.
Who built the second Beis HaMikdash?
Ezra.
What? Who wrote?
Who built the second Beis HaMikdash?
Ezra's time.
Ezra said
Jewish people.
We'll see.
The laborers.
All the people that
We will
came
see.
back from Babylon.
We will see. We will see. It was under Daryavish, I think, under the Persian rule.
It was under Persia.
Yeah, but
I said, who actually built it?
It had to be under Persian rule. 'Cause
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We will see. In other words, what this pasuk is saying is there's a 70-year Shemitah cycle, 70 Shemitah cycles. 7 of them are before permission is given, 62 of them are after permission is given, and 1 of them is cut in half. 3 of the years go to the first 49 years, 4 of the years go with the 434. Okay. V'yacharei hashavuim shishim ushnayim. After the 62 Shemitah cycles, Yikares Mashiach. Mashiach will be cut off. Now, who's the Mashiach? Who is the Mashiach?
Koresh was the Mashiach.
Koresh is long gone. Koresh gave permission to build the second Beis HaMikdash. He died even before the second Beis HaMikdash was built. It's saying at the end of the Bayesheni, Mashiach will be cut off. Rashi says what?
There was no Mashiach.
There was no Mashiach.
As you said this morning, it's an
Correct. There was no Shemonah Mishcha. Right? So the question, who is this Mashiach? So Rashi says this refers to King Agrifas, who is the last king of Yehuda before Churban Bayesheni. V'einenu. And it's like, as if he's not there.
Why do they call him Mashiach? Called Kamela.
Says Rashi, Mashiach Eino Elo Lashon Sar V'Gadol. The Lashon of Mashiach means, the anointed one could just mean a Lashon of greatness.
Don't tell a lot of that.
Mitzudim, right? Mitzudas David says also it's Agrifas, but there are other opinions. Some say it's referring to the Kayin Gadol.
Weasel, not you. Weasel, not you, Weasel.
Okay.
Mezinkis.
The city and the Holy One will be destroyed. The HaKadosh refers to the Mikdash. Am Nogid Haba V'kitzay Vashetef. What does this mean? What does it mean? Yashchas Am Nogid Haba. The nation with the prince who will come will be the ones who destroy them. Says Rashi, this refers to Titus. V'kitzay Vashetef. But their end will be utter destruction. V'soifay l'klal v'avadain. That the kayach of Rome will be utterly destroyed. V'ad kates melchama. And until the end of the war. In other words, what does that mean? V'ad kates, until the end, melchama, the war. What's the war? Rashi says melchama Gog u'Magog. This city will last forever.
The Yomim we're talking about.
Yeah. Then necheretzes shoymei mois. All the desolation will be cut off. So this is...
The war comes after the Mashiach comes?
No, who said anything about Mashiach? Mashiach is referring to King Agrifas here.
Mashiach Yosef dies in
Who's right? The word Mashiach here is not referring to Mashiach. It's saying that at the end of the 62 Shemitahs, Mashiach will die, referring to King Agrifas, not referring to the Imais HaMashiach.
There's no time frame on when this is going to happen.
No, at the end of days, right?
We get time frames from Daniel about...
Right, we got 2,300 years.
All these Shavuos, right? But nothing about the case.
We got a lot of information about the Kates. We got Idan, not in this pasuk. We got a number of clues. We got Idan, V'idan, and V'chatzi Idan. A time, 2 times and a half a time. We got 2,300 years. We got 1375. And we said it was 2013.
We came out with one that came out to 2013.
Okay.
Starting when?
2013 is not...
20,000.
Okay. Rabbi Sai, let's see the last pasuk in the Perek. V'higbir bris larabim shavua echad. And the covenant will be strong for the rabbim for 1 Shemitah cycle. What does this mean? L'rabim l'sarim refers to the great people. Kamai v'chol Rabbi Hamelech b'Sefer Yirmiyah Nun Beis. V'higbir. V'higbir means titus. Titus will prevail. Bris. He will overpower the covenant of the rabbim for 1 Shavua. What does it mean, Shavua Echad? Yavtichem behagbaras bris v'shava ad zayin shanim. In other words, what Rashi is saying the pasuk means is Titus will come, the Romans will come, and they will make a pact for the great ones for 7 years. He will issue a pact for Klal Yisrael for 7 years. But
the Romans will have a pact with Bnei Israel?
Yes.
When? This is at Ketzei Amim or?
No, at the end of the second Beis HaMikdash. However, Rashi says, within the Shemitah cycle, they'll break the covenant. So, v'higbir bris l'rabim shavua echad, v'chatzi ha-shavua yashbes. For half of the Shemitah cycle, it will put an end to zevach u'mincha, to offering and for meal offering. What does this mean? That during this, during this Shemitah cycle, within the Shemitah cycle of the destruction of the last Shemitah cycle of the standing of the second Beis HaMikdash, the Tamid will stop being brought, because even at a time that they stopped bringing karbanos, they had a deal with the Romans. They would send down money in the pulley, and the Romans would send up the behemoths, right, for the carbon Tamid. And then one day they sent down the money, and they sent up a chazer, and it says Eretz Yisrael shook, and that is when the Beis HaMikdash was ultimately destroyed. So it's saying like this: Behigbir bris l'rabim shavua echad. Titus will make a strong pact with Klal Yisrael for a 7-year period. But for the half of the Shemitah cycle, yash bezevach u'mincha, the karbanos will already stop. V'al kenav shikutzim meshaymim. Kenaf refers to the heights. Rashi says, Kinoi shel genai akamho. It is a appellation, it's a derogatory terminology for Ovdei Avodah Zarah, which means on the heights, among the abominations and the Tayevos, they will yaniach es hashemim es ha'akim shinelem es ke'evan doimim. They will allow the Goyim to place their mute idol, V'yad kolav and echaratza. And this will last, the dominion of the Avodah Zarah will last until the Adkala v'necharatza titach al shaymim. Says Rashi, the memshala, the dominion of this abomination will last until the time that destruction is poured forth upon them in the times of the King Mashiach. This is a very difficult pasuk to be able to translate. In other words, what the pasuk is saying is that Titus will come, and he'll make a covenant with Klal Yisrael, and the covenant will be a 7-year covenant. However, the covenant will be broken in middle, and midway through the covenant, they'll already put an end to karbanos. Now, then, this is not referring to when the Tamid stopped being brought, because the Tamid stopped being brought, according to many, the very day the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, because the Tamid was continuously brought even after other karbanos were not. So
here, how long this covenant actually lasted?
What kind of covenant?
Let's see what they say.
That Rome gave them the karbanos, had some kind of an understanding.
Covenant?
Well, he says with Titus. had a covenant with Gigas until the Gigas decided to break it.
Doesn't say what the covenant is.
Let's take a look what the history of this is. The last of the 62 weeks allowed to Jerusalem. Okay, so we're talking about the last Shemitah cycle. That's the way we explained it. That they will make a covenant with Klal Yisrael. However, the Romans did not abide by the covenant, broke their promise, and abolished the sacrifice. Now, right, we read it 3.5 years before the destruction.
So, but how long? So the covenant was 7, so right in the middle. Half they observed, and then the 3.5 years they decided.
So he asked. So he points out that that's not true because the Talmud stopped the day that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So we said we have to say that's talking about other karbanos besides the Talmud. Now over here again, the word knaf, like Rashi translates, refers to the height. Upon the height. So and upon the soaring heights, the temple for idolatry was, he says, erected by Hadrian on the side of the Beis Hamikdash. When did this happen? 52 years after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So in other words, this is a nevuah. Look at the end of the pasuk. The end of the pasuk says.
Adrian father?
No, that was Vespasian. That was Aspasianus. Right. So again, the way he's reading the pasuk, based on the Abar Benel, that's the way he reads it, is that it's referring to when Hadrian would erect on the Makam HaMikdash a temple for Avodah Zarah. And what does the end of the pasuk mean? The ad kalav necharatza, until extermination is decreed. In other words, this desecration will last until God pours forth complete destruction upon the goyim who are occupying the Makam HaMikdash. Okay, so that is the conclusion of Perek Tes. However, Perek Tes is not the end of Daniel's nevuah. Let's just see a little bit more. Let's just see one more pasuk. B'shnas shalosh l'koresh melech paras. Now we're in the 3rd year of the reign of Koresh, the king of Paras. Now again, Koresh began to rule what? 18 years before the construction of the Bayis Sheni. So we're now 15 years before the Bayis Sheni is built. So in the 3rd year of Koresh's reign, Davar Nigla Daniel, the matter was revealed to Daniel. Asher Nikra Shemai. Remember from the beginning, Daniel was given the name Belshazzar. Ve'emes Hadavar, and there was a certain truth to this. V'tzava Gadol. Now tzava can mean time, and in a long time, this will occur. Ubines Hadavar. The Malach tells Daniel, understand the matter. Ubino Loi B'Mareh, to be able to understand this vision. It says Rashi that Daniel foresees that the Malchus of Koresh ended, and he foresees that Koresh's command to build a second Beis Hamikdash is ended. Why? Because the Tsar Yehuda wrote a sitna. So now Daniel is Neshtoimim again. Hashem had just promised Daniel, everything is going to be beautiful. Hashem's going to tell Koresh to give orders to build a second Beis Hamikdash. And then 3 years later, Daniel sees the orders were given and nothing doing. So again, Hashem has to be mechazik him again. Don't worry, it's coming. And we'll pick it up over here, Mitzvah Hashem, next time.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.